Welcome to Mental Models Daily, where we explore one mental model each day to help you elevate your daily decision-making. Today we're diving into a fascinating concept that bridges physics and social sciences: the observer effect. The observer effect is a phenomenon where the act of observing or measuring something changes the thing being observed or measured. It's like trying to check the air pressure in a tyre. The very act of measuring lets out a small amount of air, slightly changing the pressure you're trying to measure. This concept originated in quantum physics, where scientists discovered that observing subatomic particles actually changes their behaviour. It's as if these tiny particles are shy performers who change their act when they know they're being watched. But the implications of the observer effect extend far beyond the quantum realm, influencing fields from psychology to management. Let's consider an example in a more familiar setting. Imagine a manager deciding to sit in on a team meeting to evaluate performance. The very presence of the manager might cause team members to behave differently, perhaps speaking up more, or conversely, becoming more reserved. It's like a nature documentary where the animals act differently when they sense the camera crew nearby. In the business world, the observer effect has significant implications for performance evaluations, market research, and even customer behaviour. It's the reason why focus groups don't always accurately predict consumer behaviour in the real world. It's like trying to study natural behaviour in an unnatural setting. The very act of studying changes what you're trying to observe. The observer effect is closely related to the Hawthorne effect, named after a series of studies conducted at the Hawthorne Works factory. Researchers found that workers' productivity improved when they knew they were being studied, regardless of the actual changes in their working conditions. It's as if the attention itself was the motivating factor, like plants growing towards a light source. In psychology, we see the observer effect in action during experiments and therapy sessions. Participants might alter their behaviour when they know they're part of a study, and patients might present a different version of themselves to their therapist. It's like trying to observe a natural ecosystem after you've already stepped into it. Your very presence has changed the dynamics. So, how can we apply the observer effect model in our daily lives? Firstly, it reminds us to be cautious about the conclusions we draw from observations. Whether we're evaluating employee performance or conducting market research, we need to account for how our observation might be influencing the results. It's like being a detective who realizes their presence at the crime scene might be altering the evidence. Secondly, understanding the observer effect can help us in personal interactions. When we're aware that our presence or attention might be influencing others' behavior, we can adjust our approach accordingly. It's like being a wildlife photographer who knows how to minimize their impact on the animals they're trying to photograph. Lastly, the observer effect encourages us to be mindful of our own behavior when we know we're being observed. Whether it's in a job interview, on social media, or during a performance review, our awareness of being watched can influence how we act. It's like being on a stage. The knowledge of an audience can change our performance. In conclusion, the observer effect is a powerful reminder of the complex interplay between the observer and the observed. It challenges us to think critically about our observations and measurements and to consider the unseen influences in our interactions. By being aware of this effect, we can strive for more accurate observations and more authentic interactions. Thank you for joining me today on Mental Models Daily. I hope this exploration of the observer effect hasn't left you feeling like you're constantly under a microscope. After all, sometimes the most valuable observations are the ones we make when no one thinks they're being watched. Until next time, may your observations be insightful and your influence positive. For more mental models, please visit mentalmodelsdaily.com or find us on X or Instagram. Our podcast music was provided by the podcasthost.com and Alitu, the podcast maker. Find your own free podcast music over at thepodcasthost.com.